Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX14 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode I'm sailing out in the Tier VII American aircraft carrier, known as the Ranger, in a Tier VII Domination game on the map Haven. The focus of today's gameplay is the concept of carrier sniping, or defined simply, taking out the enemy aircraft carrier, preferably within the opening quarter of the game, i.e. the first 5 minutes, with a single strike from our strike squadrons, i.e. our torpedo bombers and our dive bombers, of which the Ranger gets 2 dive bomber squadrons and a single torpedo bomber squadron. Now as we start to send out all of our aircraft over time, with the Ranger having considerably long preparation times and orbit squadrons, there's a risk and there's a reward to carrier sniping. There's the obvious reward. Eliminate the enemy aircraft carrier and it means all your planes can operate with impunity apart from catapult fighters and spotting aircraft and defensive AA consumables and the raw AA placed on enemy ships. But at the same time there are the risks which we'll go into, such as how do you not tell your opponent you're going to do carrier sniping, and outside of that how much time you have to invest in order to try and pull it off. Now we'll cover the second part very shortly, but the first part, hiding your approach. So as many of you will be aware by now if you've been watching my carrier videos for 2018, as we work towards improving our carrier play, my opening gambit is typically to provide spotting across the centre of the map. The idea being I want to give my teammates as much information as possible in terms of what the enemy team's positioning is. That way they can start to react, they may even be able to get some cheeky citadel hits off at long range if they're battleships, and it all works in favour of our team if we can have that little bit of extra information. Now the issue with this match is that it's a rather special one. There are no destroyers, but there are ample numbers of cruisers on either side, which means the AA screens are going to be rather horrific. And what you'll see me doing almost at the start of the game is moving myself all the way up onto the northern side, because I want to get behind our Cleveland, our shores, so that way if the enemy aircraft carrier is going to come for me, they've got to take the longest possible route around the edge of the map, or they've got to go through a considerable AA screen, and I can always move towards my allies with that AA if needs be. With the Ranger having a top speed of 29.5 knots. Now providing spotting across the centre of the map, what I'm also doing in the meantime is clustering together my bomber squadrons. The logic behind this is when I'm ready to go for the enemy aircraft carrier, I want all 3 squadrons to go together. Now at the same time I'm looking out for what the enemy aircraft carrier is doing, and the fact I hadn't seen any aircraft for some time, i.e. for the opening 2 minutes pretty much, gave me the idea that perhaps my opponent was also going for a carrier snipe. But instead they revealed their hand slightly by showing one of their dive bomber squadrons, which is now going for our friendly Colorado. They're going to lose a number of planes here as the Colorado's got considerable AA and the Nuremberg's also got a good amount of AA if it's running the Sea Hall, and we can see that our Colorado took a hit but nothing major. Our fighters haven't arrived in time, but also looking at the positions of the enemy fleet at this point, it looks as though our best approach to getting around behind the enemy team with our planes will be to push down into the southwestern corner and around. This also means I can block off the rest of the Ranger, i.e. my opponent's squadrons, as they try to come up through this side. Now another thing I've noticed by looking at the first dive bomber squadron is that my opponent does not have the air supremacy captain skill at tier 4, which gives dive bomber and fighter squadrons an extra aircraft. Now what this means to me is I can use my fighters just to lock up my opponent's fighters and grind them down, because I'll have the greater number of planes and that will typically mean that I'll win the overall engagement. Now I'm not going to drag my bombers too close to this fighter squadron, because what my opponent could do is use this as a means of being able to get close enough to my bomber squadrons to strafe out and rip them to pieces before then breaking away, as we'd be both flying at roughly the same cruising speed with our fighters, in our instance 166 knots. But instead, by keeping our distance with our bomber squadrons, my opponent's not strafing out and the enemy fighter squadron is now gone. And this means I've now got a 2-minute window in which to attack the enemy aircraft carrier, because I know the preparation time on fighters on the Ranger's case, when you've lost all your fighters in a squadron, is roughly 2 to 2.5 minutes, which is absolutely painful. So we need to make the most of this. Now I've got to take my time at this point, and you'll note this is where the risk comes in, because look how much time I'm having to invest in making sure my bombers get around the AA screen. Now it's very likely they will be redetected at some point. It looks as though the enemy cruisers are gradually positioning themselves to spot these planes, and the enemy Leon, as we're going to see shortly, will definitely spot our planes as they're coming around. And on top of this right now, if my opponent wanted to, they could attack off Perth, who's pushing into Bravo for example, with their torpedo bomber squadron and their dive bomber squadrons, and rip the Perth to pieces, and I wouldn't be there to help, because my fighters are alongside the bomber squadrons here, using the fighters as a means of covering my bombers if the enemy fighters take off in time. Then gradually making our way around, the Leon is coming down a little bit, so we're having to go around the Leon, making sure we don't get caught up in their considerable AA range screen, and we'll soon spot the enemy aircraft carrier, as the Ranger's got poor detectability by air of 13.3 kilometers as standard. We spotted them, and we're now going to go in for the kill, and I now will need to react fast, because what I've noticed is they're heading full speed towards their Dunkirk and their Budioni, which means if they get close enough, the Budioni will flip on defensive AA if they have it equipped, and it means that the spread of our dive bombers and our torpedo bombers will be severely compromised. So dive bombers going in first and foremost, torpedo bombers coming in a little bit behind. We're just going to have to go all in at this point, and this is another consideration. Get it wrong and this was a waste of time. Get it right and it's going to be a massive reward and payoff. The fighters are just taking off as well, so we're right on the bubble here. So our first bomber squadron goes in very nicely. Our second bomber squadron comes in and does considerable damage, and we're caught up with the defensive AA screen of the Budioni here, so we go for the quick drop, noting that our torpedoes have been spread, but due to the overall length of the Ranger, it looks as though we're going to take it out. Now we got very fortunate there, as we took out the enemy aircraft carrier, just over the 5-minute mark of the game, in the fact that due to the overall profile of the Ranger and its poor turning circle radius of 1010 metres, we're able to hit with 3 torpedoes despite the defensive AA screen of the Budioni being in place. But now let's think about it, what's happening at this point? Well, the pressure's off of me to worry about the enemy fighters and the enemy bombers. We can see that the enemy bombers did make it through to attack our ships all the way up in the northeastern corner, but it doesn't look as though they've done too much damage. So I'm actually quite relieved at this point. But you can see that whole risk versus reward. The fact that I've had to sacrifice being a team player for what effectively was, say, 3 or 4 minutes in order to pull off a kill of that magnitude. And I say that magnitude because on the chessboard right now, the enemy team's major piece has just been eliminated. The carrier can really turn games over time, especially if it's got a lot of planes left as the game goes on into its latter stages. Now with that, what can I start doing with my fighters, you may be wondering, because they become a little bit irrelevant, don't they? When you've taken out the enemy aircraft carrier and all that's left is catapult fighters and spotting aircraft. Well, that's precisely the point. You start taking out the catapult fighters and the spotting aircraft when they're exposed, because think, whilst all these planes are still up, they are spotting over land masses, they're spotting for the enemy team, and everyone taken out reduces the resources available to the enemy team. On top of that, the one thing I will start to do as time goes on is move my fighters into a central position, because I want to use them to spot the enemy fleet continuously. Now if there were destroyers in this game, I'd be putting my fighters over those destroyers, so that way they can't go anywhere without being harassed by the presence of my fighters and therefore shells of friendly cruisers or battleships, or destroyers knowing exactly where the enemy's destroyers are and therefore they've got the upper hand in information. Because the team that has the greater map awareness and the greater knowledge normally comes out on top in my experience of World of Warships. But thinking about what could be, bringing my bombers back up now, I'll be looking for targets of opportunity, and that's what the fighters can be used to do as well, detect the enemy ships that are by themselves. And here I can see a Dunkirk, which is pushing in towards the southeastern corner of Bravo, is all alone, and my dive bombers would love to pound that French ship into oblivion, because it hasn't got too much AA. We can see the Budioni is well outside of effective AA range of that Dunkirk. Even if they've rushed over now with a considerable speed, they're not going to be getting there anytime soon. And the dive bombers and the torpedo bombers of my ship are now up and they're making their way over. And they do travel reasonably fast, with our torpedo bombers coming in at 133 knots and the dive bombers at 137 knots. And I must admit, on a personal level, I love the Ranger's aircraft. I may not be the best carrier player, and I may admit it's probably the underperforming carrier according to a number of people in the community compared to the Hiryu, the Japanese counterpart, and then the premium Kaga and the Saipan, but I adore this ship for what it is, and so be it. So with our dive bombers now coming down, we're obviously going to take the standard tactic of set the fires, force our opponent to put the fires out, and then go in with the torpedo bombers to finish them off. You'll note the catapult fighter taking off, and that's where my fighters can come in to clear the catapult fighter out of the way. Give my squadrons the ability to go in without being forced to spread out their bomb load, i.e. when the catapult fighter latches on. Going in, we set a fire, and we hit with 2 more bombs with our second squadron, no additional fire. But the Dunkirk being on rather limited health, it means that our torpedo bombers can go in and eliminate it without the need to use flooding. We just need to get approximately 2 torpedo hits. We're remembering that we do 9,867 HP of torpedo damage maximum with each torpedo. And it looks as though we're successful. There we go, just needed the 1 torpedo hit in the end, we dropped a little bit too close. With that out of the way, we now return to the focus of spot the enemy team with our fighters and make sure that the enemy team can't sail around without being spotted. And in return, my teammates can move more intelligently around the map, or that's what I'm trying to confer to them. So it becomes a little bit quieter once you've taken out the enemy carrier. In fact, it becomes a lot quieter, simply because there's no threat to you as the carrier player, other than just leaving your planes to get ripped apart by AA. Of course, you can't just start acting stupidly. We may in this case have a hangar capacity of 73, but we need to manage every aircraft to make it count, simply because it could be important as the game goes on. Although it does look as though the tide is turning in my team's favour, one of us having one capture point, almost a second capture point. Well, in fact, we do have the second capture point, it's just the enemy team's in it, and we're almost on our third capture point now, taking Bravo. So as time goes on, you can see our fighter squadron is out of harm's way. It's just being a nuisance. It's keeping the York, the Mutsu and the Budyani spotted when my teammates can't see them. And therefore they're never going to be able to take that objective without being continuously harassed. And in the meantime, this helps us pass the time as our squadrons get prepared once more, as we've got the considerable reload times of 33 seconds on our torpedo bombers and 38 seconds on our dive bombers. Now, so what I'm doing with my carrier, I'm moving it around the map into the position where it's not going to be detected by the enemy team, and it's behind the majority of my fleet. So that way, if an enemy ship does try to flank around, they're going to have to flank through my teammates. They're never going to be able to catch me unaware. Something that I personally feel you need to learn as a carrier player: always keep your carrier moving, even if it's got poor concealment. Simply because if you get caught off guard by a much nimbler ship, i.e. a cruiser or so be it a destroyer, you're going to get ripped to pieces, and then you have to start thinking about bringing all your dive bomber squadrons and all your torpedo bomber squadrons back to defend against this one threat you never anticipated. But you can anticipate it if you move around the map. Bringing the squadrons forth, I've noticed the enemy Leon has been spotted and it's isolated. Our friendly Nuremberg is responsible for spotting it, good on them. The Leon appears to have got very lucky not taking torpedoes right at the last moment there, and we're going to tip the balance in terms of that Leon's health, getting rid of as much health as possible. It seems to be pretty much on maximum health at the moment, we'll soon see to that, as our teammates also start to shoot it. And in the meantime, you can see my fighter squadron is still based up towards Alpha, keeping the enemy ship spotted, such as the Budyani. And for now, I can focus on taking on the Leon. As even though they've got considerable AA, the dive bombers will make it through. We've lost one dive bomber on each squadron, and hitting with 2 bombs and setting a fire. Not as good as what we perhaps hoped for, but it's enough. With the fire now burning, they'll lose a little bit of health, and if they put the fire out, it means that we can use our torpedo mods to cause flooding. Although the health that's left of that Leon, if we get enough torpedoes in, surely that'll do it, right? Bingo. That felt satisfying. So with the Leon now out, and the fighters just remaining up towards Alpha, it means we can now send them off chasing, firstly the spotting aircraft of what was the now dead Budyani, and we can send them after the Nuremberg at the top. And we can also see another Budyani down towards the south, heading around Bravo. But really this game's in the bag for our team now. We'll spot the Nuremberg, and then we'll start moving down towards the Budyani. Although by the looks of things, with the enemy Nuremberg shooting at our Miyoko and Normandy, they'll be self-spotting, i.e. they'll be spotting themselves through firing. And it means we just need to spot the Budyani for our team, as they move between land masses. Using those as cover to become undetected, it's not going to help them. Otherwise the game's over, we're not going to get any more strikes off of our aircraft, and we'll just have to wait it out. So a rather simple victory for today. We can see our battle performance amounted to a damage output of 99,711 HP, and we also picked up one standard achievement, that being the devastating strike for destroying an enemy ship with a single artillery salvo, torpedo salvo, or aircraft by causing damage to over 50% of the destroyed ship's normal health pool, in this case with our aircraft, the torpedo bombers, on the enemy Leon. Coming on to the team scores, we can see that we marginally topped our team in terms of base experience earned, picking up 1,493, and in terms of our role over the course of the game, the elimination of the enemy aircraft carrier as achieved for our snipe at the start was potentially quite a game changer, simply because the enemy team no longer had the ability to call upon air support when it was needed most. No dive bomber squadrons or torpedo bomber squadrons to try and tip the balance of a given engagement on the battlefield. Instead, our team had that luxury, and it meant that we could operate more freely over the course of the game, whether it be our teammates not fearing enemy aircraft coming in to attack them, or myself being able to call my bombers on targets of opportunity without hesitation, just making sure to keep an eye on the AA screens offered by the enemy ships. And in terms of our fighters, they just kept the enemy ships spotted, particularly those who pushed towards Objective Alpha, and mean that we're starting to form with our teammates a win-win situation. Coming on to our detailed report, we have one key item to note here, and that's in the team play category, damage caused upon our spotting. 57,655 HP, practically 2 cruisers worth. This serves to highlight the rather hidden role of using aircraft such as our fighters in order to spot the enemy team ships, meaning our team are able to shoot at them from positions where they wouldn't normally be able to spot the enemy fleet, and it really puts the enemy team under a level of stress, in knowing that they haven't got the ability to deal with the fighters, say if their aircraft carrier has been sniped out of the game early on, or alternatively they haven't got the aircraft to spare to get rid of our planes, which are just simply spotting the enemy team. And as time goes on, that damage tally is only going to build up, and as stated earlier, information is a key asset and one of the game winning ones in my experience. And finally, coming to credits and experience earned, we can see that after additions and deductions, we walked away with 213,994 silver credits and 2,240 commander experience. To conclude, hopefully today I have demonstrated the basic risks and rewards associated with carrier sniping in the game of World of Warships. Where the rewards are plain to see. As the carrier player, you can operate more freely with your bombers in picking on targets of opportunity without having to be worried about interception from the enemy fighter squadrons, and on top of that, with your fighters, you can use them to provide information to your teammates on the enemy ship's positions. Your teammates can operate more freely, they don't have to worry about being struck by torpedo bombers or dive bombers, and in general it means your team are able to cover more ground with greater confidence compared to the enemy team, who are going to be assailed by the constant threat of detection from planes or the constant threat of incoming bombers. But the risks are also there. The fact that you have to invest a large amount of time and resources when going for the carrier snipe, and if you do not successfully pull it off, it puts you as a carrier player in a bad situation for a good amount of time, and on top of that it leaves your team exposed to the threat of enemy bombers attacking them whilst your fighters are focused on escorting your bombers to the target. But if you do manage to succeed, you can stay with a smile on your face, scratch one flat top. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. But until next time, as always ladies and gentlemen, take care and fair seas.